This is your warning to click off of this video if you don't want to hear my full, unadulterated opinions of Avatar: Fire and Ash after 2 IMAX viewings. I plan on going through everything from the marketing and online sentiment of this film, its plot holes as well as strengths, to where the story seems to be headed and if I now believe we'll even get to see it on the silver screen. This was my most anticipated movie of the year, and I was fairly confident that Cameron would deliver at least at the level of The Way of Water, which in my opinion is fine, but not as good as the first. The first movie stands alone as a complete story with well-defined character arcs despite using character archetypes. The Way of Water was described as the first in a new quadrilogy, so I gave it a lot of slack in the story department because I was invested in seeing plot threads play out through multiple movies. This film promised a conclusion to the first trilogy with meaningful resolutions to the hanging plot threads from the second film, revelations about more of the inner workings of the moon's ecosystem and global consciousness through Kiri, and the introduction of 2 new Na'vi tribes. I was slightly underwhelmed with what Fire and Ash offered, which is a shame because conceptually this film had a lot going for it that could have made it much better than the first 2. It was able to meet the visual expectations these films have had for ages, but doesn't quite deliver on progressing the plot. Perfect for another casual trip to Pandora, but not quite what I wanted as someone invested in the lore. It misfires by failing to deviate from familiar plot devices, wading in familiar waters far too long, and I think that Cameron knew that quite a few audience members would leave theaters with a similar opinion. Off the bat in interviews, Cameron seemed to play up the importance of going to see this film from what I interpreted to be a position of uncertainty. I saw tons of interviews where he discussed the current state of the movie theater experience and acknowledged that the box office is significantly down from where it was pre-2020. While The Way of Water had the talking point of a revolutionary new technology for simultaneous performance capture above and below water, this film didn't push the envelope in the same way. The technological discussion for interviews this time centered on the actor's performance through said performance capture. Cameron sought to dispel the belief that the actors only lent their voices to the blue characters projected on screen. As a fan, I've seen the behind-the-scenes videos for both of the previous movies and the documentary, so I can't speak to just how uninformed the general moviegoer is to the actual process. I can understand, however, why it might be important to draw a clear distinction between animated movies and the performance capture used in this film if Cameron's aim was to push more mature themes and possibly appeal to critics for more serious consideration for awards. It would do a lot to establish Avatar as a more respected franchise, since the actors are generally overlooked come award season. I wish that I could wipe the 5 minutes of Emilia Perez I saw from my mind, but Saldana's Oscar for that abomination certainly seemed like a consolation prize for the first Avatar. There was a heavy emphasis on Varong and the new Ash tribe in marketing, with several clips dropping that spoiled elements I believe would have been better to experience for the first time in theaters. Spider being able to breathe Pandora's air was especially egregious since it was one of the main plot points to differentiate this film from the second. Taruk's return seemed tacked on, and by Cameron's own admission, this was the case. It wasn't in the original script, but he felt that Taruk needed to return in the third film rather than appearing in a later movie. Having seen how Taruk was utilized, I think it actually detracted from the overall story and conjured unnecessary comparisons to the first movie. Why bring up that when you ride the beast you become the beast when nothing was shown to change about Jake's fighting or psyche? He flipped just as many helicopters as he did before. Avatar buzz online has always been confined to its niche communities. Regardless, theaters see repeat viewings by the general populace over several months. Despite vocal disapproval of the franchise online, the films have all made over $1 billion at the box office. The critics' out-of-theater reactions were critical of its extreme length and similarity to the second film, which can be hard to gauge when franchises often employ a few set structures and plot points that are basically their brand. I took these views with a grain of salt and went into the film open to Cameron's promise of a darker tone with unexpected turns. What people are saying online about the film won't necessarily impact how many people go to see it, but I can say that I have seen more negative sentiment from fans, such as myself, than with the previous two installments. I cannot stress enough the validity of these responses, especially to the long-term health of the IP. I'll get into several of my own qualms with the film, but first, let's start with what I quite enjoyed. Avatar has needed more factions for a long time, and I think that adding a ruthless but competent leader like Varong was a great idea. Varong certainly believes Awa exists, but has turned her back on her since she ignored her people's calls for help. Fire has proven to be more powerful than Awa in her view, since the volcanic eruption that destroyed her people also destroyed the root system Awa relies on to interface with creatures and actually enact physical change in the environment. She's actually very knowledgeable and must at least possess a basic plant knowledge based on all the powders in her yurt and usage of that other very special powder she uses on Quaritch. She's specially trained in the dark arts of Pandora, which we have not seen before, and I get the impression that she's had to learn a lot of it on her own. Her thirst for knowledge plays out through her immediate interest in guns, and it's a mark of a good leader that she notices an item that can benefit her people and will not stop until she gains it. When Quaritch comes to her for aid, she immediately knows who he's looking for, Jake and Spider, without him actually saying it. She also realizes that Kiri is different and was the one that helped them escape from capture when they noticed the spike stuck in the guards. Good, captivating performance. Honestly, no complaints on my part for how this character was portrayed. Actually, the whole Vrong and Quaritch dynamic really worked in this film, and actually got me interested in how Quaritch will be changed the longer he stays out and about in Pandora. Yes, they're the foils of Neytiri and Jake in a Bonnie and Clyde kind of dynamic, but it works. The way Ardmore clearly views the Na'vi as inferior and Quaritch stands up to her at the base is really great, especially because Vrong is shown to not understand English in that scene. It means that Quaritch's Na'vi has improved significantly, but I'm not exactly sure about the time frame for that happening. Holy smokes, Neytiri and Jake are pretty bad parents. This film definitely had the lowest lows in terms of the strength of the family unit. Loak almost offs himself. There's the whole faith versus self-reliance argument, and Neytiri is forced to admit that she may just possibly be ashamed of the humanness of her children. Neytiri's not just crying in the background in this one, and her speciesism is at least believable as a result of how much tacked-on grief she's had movie after movie. In this one, Kiri's dealing with her immense powers while feeling separated from the one thing that connects everyone else, connecting directly with Awa. It was good to see her saving people and helping them escape without fighting with weapons, since it does a lot to distinguish the different characters when they have their own unique fighting styles. Kiri even has to go against Loak when he's trying to carry Spider away, which, to me, seems like she used the voice from Dune to force him to bring him back. We saw her control the anemone in the second film. In this one, she's leveled up quite a bit to control dart plants, call on Awa to command squids, and go head-to-head with Varong, and win. Next up, possibly controlling other Na'vi with her voice alone. There are a lot of overt religious parallels in this film. One such example, when she's force-feeding Spider the Autocarina seed, seemed like giving him communion bread to me. Kiri's name is literally derived from that word, so Spider literally ate of her flesh and was saved just as Christians eat the bread in remembrance of Jesus giving his body for their salvation. We didn't get its sacrificial death in this one, but I still bet it'll happen in the future at some point. More world building at this point is a must for every new entry, and we do get some new stuff here. The Talim Wind Traders join the film with their whimsical flying ships and fashionable cloaks. We really have Cameron out here talking about how the gastrointestinal tract of a flying jellyfish is able to keep a woven ship afloat, steered by ropes without pulleys, his wheels go against Awa's 3 laws. I never thought at any point that aspects were introduced to the world that broke with canon or were made up on the spot. Everything shown so far on the spiritual side with Kiri fits. As Jake says, this world goes much deeper than you can imagine. I'm here screaming at Cameron that I want to see more of it, but there's only so much you can fit, even in a 3+ hour movie. Cameron has set a very high standard for the visuals, and if this ever wavered, it would immediately kill the franchise. Those half and water shots in 3D were excellent. I love Loak's sniper sights, the 3D virtual terrain map at the RDA base, and the 3D just always helps to make you feel like you're seated with the characters in the village, living with them as you grimace at their marriage in jeopardy. Okay, so now to get into things that didn't break the film for me, but weren't the best. Where's the depth to the plot? We have most of the same problems here at the end of the movie as we did at the beginning. The RDA is still there. Just because Spider's now one of the people doesn't make it seem like there's a satisfying wrap-up. I would have needed the internal power struggle of the RDA to show more cracks to make me believe it ate itself and could be wiped out by the Na'vi. More should have progressed by the third movie, and Cameron is advancing the plot pretty slowly in my opinion. If this is going to be the last film, then the conclusion just isn't satisfying to me. This film is basically The Way of Water Part 2. I only put this in the bad category because so much of the marketing seemed to indicate new locations with the ash and wind traders. It possibly could have just been marketed as Part 2 since audience members' expectations would have matched better with what was served. This movie continues on with the themes from the second movie, Loak and Payakan as outcasts, Loak feeling like a disappointment to his father, even though Jake said, "I see you" in the last one. I see you're still a disappointment, more like it. I mean, we have Kiri not knowing who her father is, Natiri hating Spider, and there are also a lot of familiar locations still. We have whale hunting and Rita being brought up again, the Council of Whales who don't want to fight, but they'll fight eventually. We have people getting kidnapped and being held on a ship. Oh, and one of the things that was kind of baffling is that it's not acknowledged that Spider was the one to save Quaritch. Quaritch just says that he's tough to kill. I mean, come on. This could have played into Jake's decision to sacrifice Spider, but yeah, I'll talk about that situation more in depth a little later. There also wasn't enough Varong in the Mongkwan. I expected some kind of full fire ceremony and initiation for Quaritch. I mean, was this possibly cut? He's wearing their paint, so he must have integrated more of the tribe off-screen somehow. Varong must have had a full fire dance with the Boo gang. Hopefully this isn't just me huffing copium, but there had to be more deleted scenes of Varong that'll be on the physical release, right? The other thing that is a bit of a downer is how comically evil they are. They didn't have to be Na'vi sacrificers that cut out people's hearts to eat. Given how barren their land is, the rating makes sense, but I think there also should have been positive traits about their "we answer to no one but ourselves" society to make it a more appealing alternative life for a character like Quaritch. Spending more time with the Mongkwan wouldn't have necessitated staying in their ashen wasteland either. Give the POV of Quaritch on a ride-along as they hit various forests and sea tribes in pursuit of Jake's whereabouts, with a light side of torturous burning, dancing, and storytelling around the fire in the evenings. Singling out Sky people as pink skins seemed unnecessarily targeted towards white people in my opinion. The RDA isn't completely white, is it? At least that's not the case in the games with Harding and Alma. Avatar 1 has Meals on Wheels guy at the very beginning in the RDA base. Cameron has his message that he wants to spread, but I thought it was supposed to be an uplifting ideal of how Earth and humans could be, and not a pure denigration of certain subsets of humanity. If it's specifically supposed to be about palm color, then, I don't know, come up with a more specific slur. If you're going to do speciesism, then do it right. Call them shorties or something. Dream as One also didn't work for me, and that's okay. Maybe it's just not an Avatar song in my opinion. It seemed really tacked on. Descriptions of how Miley even came to do the song didn't inspire me with a lot of confidence since it seemed like it was pretty last minute. Karen met her at some Disney Legends event and was like, "How would you like to write the end song of my next billion-dollar movie?" The song was jarring to hear, with the name cards popping up in front of Pandora's water visuals, and I don't think it's going to displace "I See You" for me at any point, but I'd be more disappointed if we didn't get a new song at all. These are the issues that drop my actual rating of this movie in comparison to the other two, due to either feeling out of character, being illogical, or feeling like a repeat of previous films in a way that detracted from this film, rather than feeling like it built on the previous ones. There's a way to mirror and complete arcs that doesn't involve the exact same plot points, with the exact same characters and the exact same locations. Jake almost sacrificing Spider in another religious parallel. This felt like it came out of nowhere, considering he was arguing with Neytiri the whole movie about not having hatred in her heart for Sky People. And the theater let out a what when he first brought it up to her and thought that he was testing her to point out the flaws in her thinking through some kind of reverse psychology. The RDA already had done experiments and gotten samples from him. There would have been no point. And yes, Jake, as Neytiri just said, Spider saved your life. The Abraham and Isaac sacrifice seemed like a betrayal of his character to me. There are a couple of ways I think this scene should have played out if it had to happen. Either Neytiri actually arrives on time and stops Jake's hand, or Neytiri should have been the one to go kill him secretly, then stop herself, or Neytiri should have actually saved Spider in the final fight, along with what happened here. I just didn't think that she had made up for cutting him and threatening to kill him so many times. Especially given the deleted scene version, there's no question there about what her intentions were. My family had debated after the second movie if Neytiri really would have killed Spider or not, and I always thought that she would, given how consumed by grief and anger she was. In this film, she picks up the knife in their hut again, not about to let her wounded shoulder get in the way at all. Some of these changes might draw even more comparisons to Water, but it shouldn't have been a question for Jake. Why would Spider ever trust either of them ever again? I almost expected a sacred seed to come down or spiritual intervention by Kiri or something, because surely it's not the will of Ayla to kill a kid that Kiri just morphed. I'll admit that having it be Jake's own decision rather than divine intervention at least fits, because it was never Ayla telling him to do it in the first place. Consequences of bad parenting are never addressed in this film. Jake is a bad father, and Neytiri isn't great either. Not just a Spider, but all the kids, really. After arguing with Loak, who storms off, Jake drinks in their hut before starting another argument with Neytiri. He goes to console Neytiri after really highlighting some unsettling beliefs that Neytiri probably didn't want to admit to herself, and then completely forgets about Loak. Even after Neytiri starts the scene by saying if he isn't careful, then he'll lose another son. Well, yeah, he almost did. Loak tries to kill himself because of Jake's words, and it's never addressed. Neytiri could have gone to look for Loak after the scene too, but nope, he was left to his own devices for Kiri and Soraya to arrive just in time. The story also doesn't put much focus on how Neytiri cut Spider and physically scarred him, besides Spider mentioning that his stitches are sensitive. You know what other character in fiction was permanently scarred by a parental figure? Yeah, Zuko from the other Avatar series, and no one would say that a parent scarring their child is a good trait. I'd like a few more confrontations here between the kids and their parents. Some of my initial speculations about this third entry would be that the kids would run away at some point to rescue Spider themselves, because based on everything we've seen so far, Jake and Neytiri do not value him equally. Renala going to fight, while having contractions, was just stupid. Just no. She should have stayed with Kiri and Took in the cave in safety, and then if some Mongquan came to attack them, she gets killed protecting her baby, I would have been okay with it. The movies are pretty fair when displaying men and women. Men aren't idiots. Women aren't physically outmatching men for no reason. They just have to throw a pregnant woman into battle for something, I don't know. I didn't feel anything when she died, and if Tonawari, Aonung, or Soraya did, we didn't get to see that either. The first and second acts were good in going in a different direction than the previous movies. Then, the third act looped around to being a mix of the endings of films 1 and 2. I took my family on New Year's Day, after I had watched the film on the 19th by myself, and they didn't have any of the qualms that I had regarding this. It's kind of problematic when knowing less about the universe improves your viewing experience. Loak goes out to find Payakan, who was by himself, gets attacked by the squid, almost drowns again, is saved by Tolkun and then Soraya, only for Squid to save them in the end battle thanks to Kiri. Why couldn't Cameron have used the Akula instead, since almost all those things already happened in the second movie? Sure, this shows that the bully kids from the second are now on his side, but a scene could have been shown where they have his back in the final battle that would have accomplished the exact same thing. Yes, Ava sending animals to save the day is an Avatar thing, but I like how Kiri used them for a smaller purpose in 2 to light a path way more. Here it feels way too similar to the first. There's a Jake versus Quaritch hand-to-hand fight again. I wish we had gotten a mixed version of Kiri versus Quaritch and Jake versus Varong. If Kiri had fought Varong longer, I guess that could have helped to shake things up too. As the final fights currently stand, I like them in the order the film's releases, 1 to 3. Gathering the clans, hiding in the floating mountains before an aerial ambush, whales jumping on the ships to destroy them. I've seen it, and I personally didn't need it. During the first viewing, it annoyed me way more than my second one. When I watched with family, I had made peace with the fact that most audiences want a big action set piece for the third act. I'll just always be in the minority on this one. Since Cameron said he wanted to make each movie a standalone, I would have enjoyed it way more if the third act were more of a stealth mission to free Jake by Neytiri, joined by Spider when she frees him, since, in my mind, she still needs to make up for that. We could have them aided by Garvin and some of the loyal scientists, just something to switch up the structure. If it absolutely had to be a big battle, then in the volcanic region, and no Ewoks Machina this time, please. Neither Varong nor Quaritch threaten the baby that Neytiri has just been carrying around this whole time. No one even mentions it, especially given the first thing Varong does when Loak doesn't teach her how to make thunders threaten to kill the youngest Took. This feels like a plot point that got lost somewhere on the cutting room floor because there's no way there's not more to the baby subplot. There's a nod to aliens thrown in, which I didn't need, but I didn't mind it either. But one of my biggest problems had to do with moments thrown in to justify the plot. Showing that Loak doesn't wear his comms, Jake berating him multiple times for not wearing them, Spider repeatedly silencing the alarm on his mask. If I think back to the other films, I can't think of any moments where the camera very deliberately zooms in and lingers on the items that characters would need to prevent the plot from happening. They've never had to rely on these scratches before, and I have to wonder how it got to the point that it was written into the script rather than being reworked. I don't believe that I can rate this movie by itself now. There are probably more water things than fire things in this film. It seems like it has to be considered along with 2 as a 6-hour movie. I love the Avatar universe, the world building, creature design, sense of adventure, and at times deeply moving moments, but I'm well aware of its many problems. I give this film a 6 out of 10 alone, 7 out of 10 by combining it with The Way of Water. It's clear that this movie completes arcs from the second film while trying to juggle family drama and a couple of new tribes. On its own, it's the weakest of the 3 in my opinion, but the pacing kept my attention while 2 had weak spots in the middle where I did check my watch. I have 180 plus hours in Avatar Frontiers, and as soon as From the Ashes goes on sale, I'm gonna grab that DLC to play. I couldn't wait to get back to Pandora, and had high hopes of this film overtaking the first as my favorite of the bunch, with the introduction of the Ash people, but unfortunately, it misses the mark in some areas while hitting highs that aren't as high as previous movies. The darker tone was welcome at least. My first impressions leaving the theater were disappointment with the repetition, but after further reflection, I think that almost entirely comes down to the third act. On a second viewing, I thoroughly enjoyed watching the family solidarity crumble, Gorge building alliances while losing favor with the RDA, and Vrong's curiosity. She's a quick study, and I'd love to see her learn English and grow into a true third party in the conflict by taking over other tribes with their newly acquired weapons. Other characters like Loak and Spider weren't my favorites. I really would have cut a lot of the Tolkien subplot and by extension Loak's arc from this movie. Spider's performance seemed weak at spots, but the other actors in those scenes carried. And it didn't bother me as much as some of these other issues I've talked about. What I did miss were the magical moments that Avatar is really known for. I'm talking the deep, emotional, and spiritual elements. There weren't as many of them that I can think of off the top of my head in this film. The first movie has Neytiri's bow being stopped by the sacred seed, the seeds landing on Jake, the attempt to transfer grace and the Tree of Voices, A second one has almost all of them near the end, except some time near the beginning where Kiri is breathing with the grass. Later, Kiri is teased to control fish and then controls them to save Neytiri and Took before ending with Neteyam in the spirit world. This third one has Loak and Neteyam at the beginning in the spirit world, which was when I was most emotionally impacted throughout the entire movie, and Kiri saving Spider, which I enjoyed, but I wish it hadn't been in the trailers because the surprise was ruined. Kiri, Spider, and Took walking against a heavy wind in the spirit forest towards the distant light of Awa really didn't seem as deep to me as those earlier moments. I watched The Way of Water with high frame rate, which helped to keep track of the quick flying scenes, which I thought this one would have too, but I guess the showing I went to didn't have it because Locke and Neteyam flying at the beginning was extremely hard to follow with my eyes and looked really blurry. Maybe it wasn't a lack of HFR and something else, but I had the same experience between both viewings. I'm going to have to wait for the physical release to watch those scenes again just to see what it's supposed to look like. And the other thing, when Spider said he had to take a leak, I should have as well. There were so many previews that extended the theater time that I was struggling near the end with all the water scenes, and I ended up missing Kiri saving Neytiri from Varong on the ship on my first viewing. On the second viewing, I got caught up and was actually surprised that it was Kiri that stopped Varong by using her dominating mind powers. With the way this skill's been betrayed throughout the film, it seems much more like a dark side power than a light side one, so I wonder if anyone will call her out on it or if it will have any side effects in the next one. This movie has some surprising scenes to be PG-13. I had to actually look up what is allowed with this rating since there's heavy drug usage, discussion of sex slavery, near suicide, cutting off kurus, and non-consensual ponytail touching, which seems like basically mind rape, and of course side bloob. These darker elements, especially the scene with Loak, wowed me in the theater because I didn't think that Karen would actually go there. There are a couple of death teases, like with Neytiri being shot and falling into the forest, but I'll give it a pass because it sets up Varong as a real threat. What I really wanted out of this film was more story development. It seems like only a few plot points were allowed to move forward, while the others are on hold. There also aren't as many new things in this one, which isn't only attributed to the 3-year gap between this one and the last, compared to the 13-year gap between the first and the second. There are a lot of circular arcs in this one. I mean, the RDA being a threat and Locke being a disappointment especially. More should have changed, and it seems like while the scale of the final battle was bigger, the scale of events throughout the rest of the story was much smaller. Imagine if the stakes had really been altered with a definitive RDA win. Imagine if someone like Neytiri had lost their Kura at the hands of Wrong. It's a fate worse than death, but imagine if she had to live out the rest of her life without it due to falling too deeply into hatred. It would tragically mirror Spider gaining the ability to connect. I see how Spider wanted to be seen as Na'vi, with him painting stripes on himself since the second film, but he pretty much already seemed to be culturally. I didn't get the emotional hit of him becoming one of the people because the movie didn't spend as much time from his perspective, like with Jake in Avatar 1. Going into this film, I wanted to see more of Kiri and her origin, and we got that, but it was exactly what I expected. Maud's explanation was exactly what I theorized since that point in the first movie it made the most sense for it to happen, but I was still intrigued by what she did with Spider. When she was trying to transform Spider to breathe the air and just did what she felt was right, to me, that made it pretty clear that she's just Awa herself. I mean, her body being Grace and her spirit being Awa. I mean, she's not exactly Grace since she was too weak to make it through Awa and back into her body, so that pretty much rules out reincarnation. If Awa just made another copy of that consciousness specifically, then why make a whole new being and not just put that consciousness in the adult avatar body still lying there? All I know for sure is that something has to be planned for Grace's avatar body because Chekhov's gun says it has to be relevant eventually. Otherwise, surely it would have been buried by now. Maybe Carrie will get injured or die and then she'll be transferred into it. That might be a little weird with Spider, though. The end fisticuffs between Jake and Quaritch, where Quaritch jumps off at the end. I mean, who believes that Quaritch is actually dead at this point? Either Ikran or Varong caught him. She scampered off somewhere after dealing with Kiri, so was otherwise unaccounted for. I already spoken a lot about how I didn't enjoy the third act, and it seemed like Jake was clearly less enthusiastic about going through all the steps this time. You can tell Cameron wanted to walk back the white savior trope. Jake doesn't want to be Taruk Makto and tells everyone to stand up when he lands. He basically gives up in the final battle, and the Taruk disables the general ship itself before piecing out. The actual film ending in AWAS seemed about right, despite being way too short. It actually reminded me a lot of Lost. But no funeral for Vernal and Roto? I mean, sure, there wasn't a lot of time, and I guess they can easily see them again whenever they want, but the whole fact that the last scene is in Awa seemed like it could have been one of several films based on how hype was tracking. It was chosen to be a safe end in case they couldn't continue the saga. Some people had problems with it zooming out to show the planet rather than being an eye-opening shot, but the mycelial network represents everyone as a node. The interconnectedness of the planet and people is a better end if this does end up being the last one. Overall, even at 3+ hours, this film did leave me with some questions about the world and characters. What exactly is Wrong doing when she connects to other people? Is it a traumatic memory transfer? Is it hacking into their nervous system to physically control their body? Is it a battle of minds or spirit strength? She seems at least to be able to extract information by recognizing Quaritch as a Skyman. What exactly are the Na'vi and people in Awa? It doesn't seem to be a full spirit transfer since they don't remember their deaths, per Nateum. If they're strictly save points from the last time they connected, then Renal should have appeared pregnant, right? How can you actually tell who's dead and who's just visiting in the spirit world? If multiple people join, can they all interact with the version of the person in their desired environment, or is there only a single copy that can be used at a time? Seemed like the very start of this movie was around the same time as Jake opening his eyes at the end of the last, so people can access different memories of the same person at the same time, maybe? That also seems to track with the very last scene of Kiri and Spider, because I didn't spot any of the other main characters in that scene. Another question is if Awa can show copies of living Na'vi who just aren't connected at the same time. If they have to be fully dead, then how does Awa even know they're fully dead? The Na'vi say that all energy is borrowed and that they had to give it back by letting their bodies be reabsorbed back into Pandora, but what if someone just fell in lava? Or in the case of the Monquan, since they never want to connect again, will they eventually show up whether they want to or not? Is there a young version of Varong that would just show up when she dies? There are some things I hope to see in future films that would be continuations of the plotlines of these two most recent films. For Avatar 4, there has to be more depth with the Ash, a focus on Kiri's expanded powers, the RDA developing the ability to breathe, Varong confronting Awa, and maybe Quaritch connected to Awa as well. From the events in this third movie, the RDA is fracturing, and I'd like to see Quaritch and the Monquan versus Selfridge's RDA. Ardmar, I believe, is dead, and even though Quaritch and Selfridge aligned on getting Spider, I don't think Quaritch would consent to the level experiments that may be necessary to crack breathing on Pandora. Varong also still has beef with Awa, so maybe with their knowledge of the dark arts and the help of the RDA scientists, she'll find some kind of way to poison Awa's network to kill her off. Surely there are more Na'vi that are less than perfect, but not necessarily human-sacrificing levels of evil as well. Seems like Varong might become a conqueror with their new weapons, so there is probably going to be a clear delineation still between the good Na'vi and the bad ones. I mean, we're gonna have the kids growing up and finding their roles in society, Locke becoming a warrior, Took starting weapons training. I guess Soraya would become Sahik for the Met Kaina. Maybe an alien rights group will be sent to Pandora. It was odd how Jake was recorded so much at Bridgehead when phones and video really haven't been shown at any other point. I would have wanted Jake to be sent back to Earth to be tried and imprisoned in 3, then in 4, Tyrion and someone like Kiri could go to help to free him. Maybe this can be a part of one of the next 2 films. For Avatar 5, Earth has to be shown. Seeing too much of Earth and spending too much time there might take away from the escapism of the movies, but I think it's necessary to continue the moral nuance that Cameron was trying to develop with this film. Jake and Atiri could go before the world with some kind of peace conference. Humans could be shown videos of Jake that would change their heart. Kiri could bring a seed of some special plant that would be able to clear the pollution from the Earth. I'm kind of torn on what I think thematically would fit the best in regards to Earth, either saving it and sending most humans back, or considering it a lost cause and welcoming humans to Pandora as long as they adapt. If the Earth is dying, then some kind of drastic change has to be made, but if the Na'vi come to Earth and just straight up terraform it with Awa, it would require humans to physically change to be more in tune with the world and stop destroying it. Giving up on Earth completely and shipping everyone to Pandora seems too dystopian, and I'm not even really sure how you could transfer that many people. It would end up only being the rich. Given historical context, I would think that Cameron would want to avoid humans overrunning the natives' lands as well. I can imagine an ending that mirrors the end of the first, with humans gathering in the ships to go back to Earth, but this time under positive conditions after the Na'vi have traveled to Earth and helped save it with some kind of plant. Leaving only a few humans that were part of the resistance, like Norman Spider, to be transformed by Awa to live more easily on the moon. Speaking of Spider, I think Kiri and Spider will have a natural Na'vi-human hybrid baby. As weird as that may look, thanks to Awa's bioengineering. It's a good thing Kiri would be carrying the baby in this case because we have a Chihuahua Great Dane situation here. Is this it for Avatar? Even with all of his efforts to market Avatar 3, Cameron has started to walk back films 4 and 5. What once seemed like a done deal with the cash cows of 1 and 2 now seems a little more uncertain, but I think they'll still arrive, even if delayed a bit. There are a lot of things working against Cameron that he doesn't really have control over. The movie theater experience, which is just about the only way to finance these behemoths, is dying. Post-production also takes ages to render those breathtaking visuals that are the lifeblood of the films, meaning that theater conditions at the time of the next film's release are even more uncertain. There's been some talk of AI workflows, no, not generative AI, to speed up processes by working in addition to artists, but that'd be very experimental, and he has to be careful how he approaches that pathway. Any mention of AI in the art world will be met with extreme backlash, and it could kill the fan base. I truly do not think that he will hire different writers and confront the biggest Achilles heel Avatar has had since the beginning, the writing and plot. To be fair, it is hard to balance simple stories and global appeal with the depth some audience members desperately desire from future movies. Cameron could also be pulled away from finishing this epic saga to do a Ghosts of Hiroshima movie or Alita Battle Angel 2. I'll be along for wherever the Avatar ride goes next, but I have to admit that it was a bit of a letdown not to advance the plot very much after a 3-year wait. It would be absolutely grueling to see another crazy 10+ year wait. Thankfully, parts of 4 have already been filmed before the time jump, so when could we see 4 and 5? December 21st, 2029 is supposed to be the date for Avatar 4's release, and December 19th, 2031 for 5. 20 years after the original would be a significant date to keep, but Cameron has delayed before, and if he deems the market or the film not ready, I could see him sitting on it for a bit to build up more desire to go back to Pandora. Disney has lost way more money on Marvel, and I don't think that this film will bomb necessarily. It's already past $1 billion, but I don't know about $2 billion this time. I wouldn't be surprised if it eventually does reach 2, but I think 1.5 to 1.7 would be a solid return. Having said all this, I wouldn't have made this review in the first place if I weren't so invested in seeing more of this universe. So here's to hoping that the film makes whatever magical number at the box office Cameron needs to justify to himself and the mouse the need for Avatar 4 and 5. Thanks for watching, and leave your thoughts about this third entry in the Avatar universe in the comments below.